The junkyard was quiet, too quiet. Ryan, a tall human man with rough hands and tired eyes, moved carefully through the piles of metal. He wore thick gloves and a heavy jacket full of dust. Every day, he came here to collect old parts, broken machines, dead bots, rusted wires. It was dirty work, but he needed it to survive. But today, something was different. As he stepped over a pile of crushed ship panels, he heard something, a sound. He stopped. There it was again. A soft, weak cry. Ryan turned his head. "Is someone there?" he asked aloud, his voice echoing off a wall of scrap metal. No answer. He moved closer, following the sound. Behind an old transport engine, beneath a pile of blankets and trash, he saw movement. Slowly, he bent down and pulled aside a large metal sheet. And then he saw her, a small alien girl, no older than 6 or 7, with grayish-purple skin and wide, glowing eyes. Her body was thin, too thin. She hugged her knees and shook from the cold. Her cheeks were wet with tears, and her tiny mouth opened, but no words came out. "Hey," Ryan whispered, kneeling. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." She looked at him, scared. Behind her, something moved again. Ryan gently pulled the blankets back a little more. A second figure, the girl's mother. An adult alien woman lying on her side, barely conscious. Her skin was pale, cracked. Her breathing was slow. Her clothes were torn and filthy. Ryan's heart sank. "What happened to you two?" he said under his breath. He took out a bottle of water from his bag and offered it to the girl. She looked at it with big, hungry eyes but didn't move. "It's clean," he said gently. "You need to drink." The girl crawled forward and took it. She sipped at first, then drank fast. She coughed but kept going. Ryan watched her, then turned his attention to the mother. He carefully touched her forehead. Burning hot. Fever. Ryan stood up and looked around. The junkyard was huge, and they were deep inside. No one would find them here, no one would help them. "Why are you here?" he asked again softly. The girl looked up at him, and this time she spoke. "Bad men chased us," she said. "They took our home. Mama ran with me. We hid here." Ryan clenched his jaw. He had seen terrible things across the galaxy, but seeing a child like this, alone, scared, starving, hit something deep in him. He looked at the broken transport shell beside them. It was hollow inside. "All right," he said. "We need to get you warm. Stay here." He ran to the nearby piles of junk and started grabbing whatever he could. Sheets of metal, old cloth, broken panels. His hands worked fast. He built a wall around the open transport, blocking the cold wind. Then he made a roof with bent solar glass. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Inside, he placed old blankets and padded foam. He laid the mother gently on the foam and covered her. "You need food," he said, pulling out a ration bar from his pocket. The girl took it with shaking hands. She ate slowly, her eyes never leaving her mom. "What's your name?" Ryan asked. The girl looked at him. "Lyra," he nodded. "I'm Ryan, I'll help you, I promise." She didn't smile, but she looked less afraid. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed from the other side of the junkyard. Ryan's head snapped up. He grabbed a metal rod and stood in front of the shelter. "Stay inside," he told Lyra. He moved toward the sound, every step careful. A shadow moved behind a rusted ship wing. Ryan gripped the rod tighter. But when he turned the corner, nothing. Just wind and metal. He waited, then returned to the shelter. Lyra peeked out. "Are we safe?" "For now," he said. "But I'll stay close." As night fell, stars peeked through the broken metal roofs above. The junkyard felt colder, darker. But inside the small shelter, the girl slept beside her mother. Ryan sat at the entrance, metal rod in hand, watching, waiting. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was clear. He couldn't leave them behind. The sun rose slowly over the junkyard, its light barely touching the twisted towers of scrap. Wind blew gently through the gaps in the broken metal, carrying dust and silence. Inside a small shelter made from old parts and blankets, Lyra sat awake beside her mother. Ryan didn't sleep much that night. He had stayed by the shelter's entrance, protecting them. His back ached, but he didn't care. He looked at Lyra, then at her mother, who still hadn't moved much. "Any change?" he asked softly. Lyra shook her head. Her little fingers gripped her mother's hand. "She's too hot," she whispered. "She keeps shaking." Ryan knelt beside the mother. Her skin was cold and sweaty, and her breathing was weak. She needed help. Real help. But they were deep in the junkyard, far from any doctor, far from any safe zone, and Ryan had no ship, no medicine, no money. Still, he refused to give up. "All right," he said. "We'll do this my way." He stood and began searching the piles again, this time for more than just building material. He needed anything useful. A med kit, power cells, old tech, heating wires. After digging for nearly an hour, he returned with a bag full of parts. "Lyra," he said, kneeling, "I'm going to try to help your mom, but I need your help too." The little girl nodded quickly. Ryan set up a small heater using power cells and coiled wires. He placed it near the mother to warm her body slowly. Then he made a weak light using old LED strips so they could see better inside the shelter. From a broken medical bot, he found a needle and cleaning kit. It was dirty, but he cleaned it with alcohol and fire. Slowly and carefully, he used it to draw out the heat and inject hydration into the mother's arm. Lyra watched, eyes wide and full of hope. Is she going to live? Ryan looked at the mother's face. Her eyes fluttered. She was still breathing. "She's fighting," he said softly. "But we need to keep her warm and fed." Lyra reached into her pocket and pulled out a small stone. "This is for good luck," she said. "She gave it to me. Can I give it back to her now?" Ryan nodded. "Yes, she needs all the help she can get." Lyra placed the stone gently in her mother's hand and whispered something in a language Ryan didn't understand. But it felt powerful, real. Outside, the junkyard groaned with wind and metal. Something far away clanged. Ryan didn't like that sound. He grabbed his metal rod again and stepped outside for a moment. He looked around, eyes sharp. Suddenly he saw movement. A figure in the distance, near the old junk crusher. It disappeared as fast as it came. "Someone's watching he muttered. He went back into the shelter and closed the front with a metal sheet. "We have to be careful now," he said to Lyra. "Not everyone in this place is kind." Lyra looked down. "The men who chased us, they said they'd find us again." Ryan's jaw tightened. "If they do, they'll have to go through me." The day passed slowly. Ryan built more walls using rusted sheets and broken crates. He created a small cooking spot with heat bricks and a pan. He melted snow for water, heated ration bars, and shared them with Lyra. By the evening, the mother opened her eyes for the first time. "Lyra," she whispered. "Mama!" Lyra cried and hugged her. The mother was weak, but she smiled faintly. Ryan stepped forward. "You're safe now," he said. "I'm Ryan. I found you two here." The mother looked at him, confused. "Why, help us?" Ryan shrugged. "Because you needed it, and no one else was going to." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." He nodded and brought her some warm broth. She could only drink a little, but it was something. That night, the three of them sat in silence, Lyra between them, holding both their hands. The junkyard was still dangerous, but for the first time, they weren't alone. Ryan was used to danger. He had lived on the edge of the outer colonies all his life, fighting for food, for shelter, for survival. But this was different. Now he wasn't protecting just himself. He was protecting a sick alien woman and her daughter. The junkyard felt quiet that morning. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made his skin crawl. Rion stood at the top of a scrap tower holding an old pair of binoculars. He scanned the rusted land below. His shelter, built from junk, sat hidden beneath a curved engine hull. It looked like a forgotten piece of trash, exactly how he wanted it to look. But something was off. A dented hoverbike had fresh tracks in the sand. Wires had been stepped on. He saw food wrappers that weren't his. Someone was here. Someone was close. He climbed down quickly, landing near the shelter. Lyra was outside, drawing pictures in the dirt with a piece of metal. She looked up and smiled when she saw him. "Good morning, Rion," she chirped. "Inside, Lyra," he said, gently but firm. "Now." Her smile faded. She obeyed. Inside, her mother was awake, sitting up with help. She still looked weak but stronger than before. "Trouble?" she asked, her voice low. "Maybe," Rion replied. He peered out the crack in the wall. "I think someone's watching us." He didn't want to scare them, but they needed to know the truth. He had seen signs like this before. This junkyard wasn't just full of trash, it was full of hunters, scavenger gangs who sold everything they found, even people, and someone must have seen him helping the aliens. That made them a target. He spent the next hour reinforcing the shelter, stacking, heavy metal sheets making a trap from an old spring cannon and burying a motion sensor near the path. As he worked, Lyra came up to him, holding something. A sharp, rusted blade. "I want to help," she said. "If bad people come, I fight." Rion knelt beside her. "You're brave, Lyra, but your job is to protect your mom, not fight. Let me handle the rest." She hesitated, then nodded. Night came fast, and with it the shadows grew thicker. Rion sat at the entrance again, his metal rod resting on his knee. The wind whistled between the towers of trash. Then, a sound. Crunch. Metal shifting. Footsteps. He stood quickly and moved silently into the open. His boots made no sound on the dirt. He followed the noise, passing between two broken cargo crates. A low voice spoke ahead. "They're here. I saw them. That human's protecting them." Another voice laughed. "Fool. Aliens don't deserve pity. We'll take them tonight." Ryan's heart beat faster. He gripped his rod tighter and turned around quietly, heading back toward the shelter. But it was too late. A man stood in front of him, blocking the path. He wore black armor, half broken, and his eyes were cold. He held a stun knife. "Well, well," the man sneered. "Hero of the junkyard. Heard you're keeping pets now." Rion didn't speak. The man stepped forward. "Move. We'll take the girl and her mother. You walk away, stay alive." Rion looked him dead in the eyes. "No." The man raised his weapon, but Rion was faster. Clang! Ryan's rod hit the man's hand, knocking the blade away. Another swing hit his knee. The man screamed and fell. But more shadows appeared. 3, maybe 4. Too many. Rion turned and ran toward the shelter, yelling, "Get back! Hide now!" Lyra screamed inside. The gang ran after him. Just as they reached the front of the shelter, one of them stepped on the trap. Boom. A small explosion of wires and scrap burst from the ground, throwing 2 of them back. The others hesitated, but Rion stood firm in front of the shelter, bleeding, but tall. "You want them?" he shouted. "Come through me." The men paused. One cursed. "Not worth it," another said. "We'll come back with more." They vanished into the junkyard, slipping into the shadows again. Rion dropped to one knee, breathing hard. Lyra ran out and hugged him. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," he said, smiling weakly. "Just a scratch." Her mother helped pull him inside. They locked the door and stayed quiet the rest of the night. But one thing was clear now. The junkyard was not safe, and the real fight was only just beginning. Ryan's hands were covered in cuts. His muscles burned with pain, and his back ached from days of hard work. But he didn't stop. Not now. The junkyard had become dangerous. The gang had found them. And they would come back, stronger, angrier, and better armed. Ryan knew that if he didn't do something fast, Lyra and her mother would be taken, or worse. So he did what he knew best. He built. From morning until sunset, he tore through the scrap piles, dragging old armor plates, broken droid limbs, cargo doors, and rusty fencing. He stacked everything around the shelter and began forming the first real wall. Not just to keep the wind out, but to keep evil out. Inside the shelter, Lyra sat beside her mother, both watching quietly. The mother, still weak, slowly began to regain color in her cheeks. She had bruises on her arms and legs, but her eyes had life again. Lyra crawled out to where Ryan worked. "Why are you building so much?" she asked, holding a bent pipe like a sword. Ryan stopped hammering. He wiped sweat from his brow and looked at the girl. "Because walls matter. But this place is all junk," she said, tilting her head. He smiled. "Even junk can protect if you build it right." Lyra nodded. "Then I'll help." Ryan gave her a simple job: gather light pieces, bring them to him, and sort bolts and screws into small cups. She took the job seriously, working beside him like a tiny assistant. Together they made progress. By the end of the day, a fence made from broken exo-armor frames and rebar stood tall around the shelter. Sharp edges pointed outward. The junkyard winds howled, but this time they couldn't get through. It wasn't pretty, but it was strong. Inside, the alien mother smiled weakly. "You've done more for us than anyone ever did," she said softly. Ryan shrugged. "I've had worse roommates." She chuckled, then coughed. "Why are you really doing this?" Ryan paused. He looked at the girl playing with bolts, then at her mother. Thin, tired, but alive. And he said, "Because I know what it's like to have no one." Silence filled the room. Then Lyra whispered, "Not anymore. Now you have us." That night, Ryan sat by the gate he built. The stars shone faintly above the rusted towers. He held his rod ready again, but this time behind a wall. His mind wandered to his past, to the time he had nothing, no one, just empty space and cold nights. He remembered what it felt like to be unseen, unwanted. Maybe that's why he couldn't leave them. Suddenly he heard a sound, not footsteps, not voices. Clink, clink, clink. Ryan stood up quickly and peeked through a slit in the wall. A little droid rolled forward from the shadows. A round one, old, scratched, probably from a repair station. It beeped and dropped something at the wall, a sack of food. Ryan stepped outside, cautious. The droid didn't move. He opened the bag, ration bars, clean water packets, and even a healing patch. He looked around but saw no one. Then the droid projected a shaky hologram. A grainy voice said, "Help them, please, I couldn't, but you can." The message ended. The droid powered off. Ryan picked up the sack and looked at the stars. Whoever sent this, they knew, and they wanted him to protect the alien girl, and her mother too. Back inside, he gave them the food. Lyra's eyes lit up with joy. They shared a quiet meal under dim lights, the warmth of the new heater making the shelter feel almost like a home. Later that night, Ryan added something else, a sign made from metal carved by hand. "This is home." And beneath that, in smaller letters, "No one unwanted, no one left behind." The junkyard had always been a place of rust, broken dreams, and forgotten things. But now, something strange had started to grow there. Life. Ryan stood at the edge of his makeshift home, staring at the small corner of dirt he had cleared beside a broken coolant tank. He bent down, wiped sweat from his face, and pushed a seed into the soil. Around him, old crates formed walls, and scrap metal shaded the ground from the harsh sun. It didn't look like much, but it was a beginning. Behind him, Lyra skipped along the path, her arms full of bottles filled with water. "Here," she said happily. "I filled them from the drip pipe like you showed me." Ryan smiled. "Good work, gardener." "Gardener?" she asked, eyes wide. "That's what we call people who grow food." he explained. Lyra beamed. Then, I'm a gardener now. They both knelt together and poured water on the planted soil. In one corner, tiny green shoots had already started to rise, not much but enough to bring hope. Inside the shelter, Lyra's mother leaned against the doorway, wrapped in a patched blanket. Her strength had returned slowly. She still walked with difficulty, but her eyes were sharp again. Is this really going to grow? She asked, watching them. With time, Ryan said. Some old seeds I found still had life in them. Just needed care. The alien woman looked at him for a long time. You're not just building a home, she said. You're building a future. Ryan didn't answer. He just smiled and kept digging. Days passed. The junkyard garden slowly took shape. Ryan and Lyra built containers out of old drawers and computer casings. They filled them with dirt, added filtered water, and planted everything they could find. Beetroots, tubers, even alien vegetables they couldn't name. Solar panels, Ryan scavenged powered heaters and lights to help the plants grow. Inside, they fixed up more of the shelter. Ryan built a small table out of hovercraft scraps. He repaired a broken speaker, and now soft music sometimes played while they ate. Lyra painted pictures on the walls using old circuit dye, drawings of stars, flowers, and smiling faces. One of the drawings showed all three of them holding hands. Ryan didn't say anything when he saw it, but later, when no one was watching, he touched the wall gently. One morning, Ryan stepped outside and stopped cold. Footprints, fresh ones, leading around the far side of the wall. He crouched and followed them, slow, careful, alert, and then he found something strange. A small pile of clean blankets and canned food, left beside the fence. No note, no voice, no sign of who left it. He looked around the scrapyard. Silent, empty, but he felt it in his gut. Someone out there was helping them, someone who didn't want to be seen. He returned inside and stored the supplies. Lyra asked no questions, but her mother looked uneasy. Who's watching us? She asked. I don't know, Ryan answered. But they haven't hurt us. That means something. Still, he added a few more traps around the fence. Just in case. That night, something even more surprising happened. Rain. For the first time in months, clouds rolled over the junkyard and poured down. The metal roofs rattled with the sound. Ryan set out buckets to collect water. Lyra danced in the open for a few seconds, laughing until she got soaked and ran back inside. Her mother laughed too, her first full laugh in days. Ryan sat at the doorway, watching them. For a place made from broken things, the junkyard was full of strange beauty tonight. Soft music from the speaker, Lyra's laughter, plants growing in the corner, and the sound of rain, like a lullaby. He looked down at his dirty hands and the scratches on his arms. It wasn't easy, but for the first time in a long time, it felt right. Later that night, while everyone slept, Ryan stayed awake. He stood by the garden and whispered to the dark, I'll protect this place no matter what. Far in the distance, hidden in the shadows, someone watched, a figure cloaked in junkyard cloth. They turned and walked away, but not in anger. In silence, as if they too were guarding something precious. It happened during a quiet afternoon. The air was still. Lyra was humming softly, drawing shapes in the dirt near the garden. Her mother sat nearby, patching clothes with thread Ryan had found. The little home made of junk felt peaceful, almost normal. Then Ryan heard it. Engines. Low. Angry. Getting closer. He stood up from his workbench, heart racing. He knew that sound. They were back. He rushed to the gate and climbed the lookout post he had built from a broken mech leg. In the distance, he saw them. 3 bikes moving fast, kicking up dust and trash as they came. Same gang. But this time, they brought more. 5 riders total. One had a laser rifle. Another held a net launcher. They weren't here to scare him this time. They were here to take. Ryan jumped down. Inside now, he shouted. Lyra froze. Her mother grabbed her hand and pulled her into the shelter. Ryan sealed the metal door behind them, then picked up his rod and strapped on the scavenged armor he had built. Bits of old exosuits and shield plates. His heart thumped in his chest, but his hands were steady. He had prepared for this. He had promised to protect them. Outside, the bikes came to a stop just past the fence. One of the men, the leader from last time, stepped forward and kicked the gate. "Open up, hero," he shouted. "Let's not make this ugly." Ryan didn't answer. Another gang member laughed. "Come on, just give us the freaks. You can keep your junk fort." Still nothing. Then a sharp, cold voice from another man. "Burn it." Ryan's eyes narrowed. Flames. They lit a torch and threw it over the wall. It hit a crate and exploded. Into fire. But Ryan had planned for that. A sprinkler system activated, a crude one made from coolant pipes and water tanks. Steam hissed as water rained down, killing the flames instantly. Ryan stepped out onto the roof of the shelter, his rod in hand. "I warned you," he said. The gang raised their weapons, but Ryan raised his own hand and pressed a button. Boom! Blast from a buried trap knocked two of them down. Scrap flew into the air. Another man screamed as metal shards cut his leg. The gang panicked. One aimed his rifle, fired. The shot hit the side of the shelter. Sparks flew. Ryan jumped down and charged. Clang! His rod slammed into the first attacker. The man fell. Another swung a knife. Ryan dodged and hit back hard. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for family now. More bikes circled. One tried to break the fence, but the metal held strong. Another went for the back entrance, only to trip a pressure trap and crash into a wall of crates. Inside the shelter, Lyra hugged her mother. They could hear everything, the explosions, the screams, the metal hitting metal. Lyra began to cry. "He's going to get hurt." Her mother pulled her close. "We have to believe in him," she said softly. "He's not just some scavenger. He's our protector." Outside, the last man aimed his gun at Ryan's chest. "Enough," the man shouted. "You're alone. You can't win." Ryan's eyes blazed. "No," he said. "I'm not alone." Suddenly a whistle cut through the air. From the shadows of the junkyard, figures began to appear. Silent ones, hooded scavengers. One by one, people stepped out. Some with tools, some with makeshift weapons. Junkyard ghosts. People like Ryan, who had been watching, who had seen what he built. And now, they stood with him. The gang looked around, surrounded. The leader growled, then spat on the ground. "This isn't over." He climbed onto his bike and rode off. The others followed, limping, injured, defeated. Ryan stood still, panting. Then he looked around at the people who had come. A few nodded. One old man simply said, "We saw what you did. We couldn't let them take it from you." Then they vanished back into the junk. Ryan turned and walked slowly back to the shelter. Lyra ran out and threw her arms around him, crying. "You came back," she sobbed. He knelt, hugging her tightly. "I never left." Her mother stood at the door, tears in her eyes. "You saved us again." Ryan shook his head. "No. This time, we saved each other." The junkyard was quiet again. But this time it was a peaceful quiet. Not the kind filled with fear and hiding, but the kind that comes after a storm has passed. Ryan stood at the edge of the garden, looking at the plants swaying gently in the breeze. Small green leaves reached up toward the sky, full of life. He could hear Lyra's voice behind him, singing softly while she helped her mother wash old sheets in warm water. The home, once a pile of broken parts and rusted panels, had become something more. It had become theirs. The walls were stronger now, reinforced with new armor plates, shields from old ships, and the help of other junkyard dwellers. After the gang's attack, something had changed. Ryan had earned the respect of people who usually stayed hidden. Some brought tools, others brought food, cloth, seeds, or clean water. They didn't speak much, but they showed up when it mattered, and that was enough. Inside, Lyra's mother carefully placed dishes on the table Ryan had built. Her steps were slow, but steady. Her face no longer looked tired or sick. She wore a new dress, well, new for them. It was sewn from old tent fabric and ship covers, but to her it was beautiful. She turned to Ryan as he walked in. "There's food," she said. "You must eat," he smiled. "Only if you made it." "I did, and Lyra helped." At the table, Lyra grinned proudly. "I didn't burn it this time." They laughed together, the kind of soft laughter that feels like home. They ate slowly, enjoying each bite. Ryan looked around the room. Lanterns made from old light bulbs cast a warm glow. The walls were painted with Lyra's drawings. Plants sat in containers, their green leaves reaching out like curious fingers. He leaned back and sighed. This place used to be nothing but junk. Lyra's mother reached across the table and touched his hand. "Now it's a home." There was silence for a moment, then she added more quietly, "You gave us life again." Ryan shook his head. "No, I just gave you space to live it." Later that evening, Lyra climbed up to the lookout tower with Ryan. They sat together, legs swinging off the edge. She pointed at the stars. "Which one is Earth?" Ryan searched the sky and finally pointed. "That one. Faint, but strong." "Do you miss it?" she asked. He thought for a while, then shrugged. "Sometimes. But I think I was always meant to find this place." Lyra leaned against him, her voice soft. "I'm glad you did." Below them, her mother stepped out of the shelter and looked up. The starlight touched her face, and she closed her eyes. The next morning brought another surprise. A hovercraft approached, old, loud, but not threatening. It stopped outside the fence. Ryan, cautious, walked to meet it. A woman in uniform stepped out, a junkyard inspector. She looked around, impressed by the walls, the garden, and the home. "This is your place?" she asked. Ryan nodded. She pulled out a scanner and read the area's ID chip. "This section of the junkyard hasn't been claimed in years. But if you've built something here, you could apply for ownership." Ryan blinked. "Wait, what?" "You can make it official," she said. "Turn this junk into your land, your home, legal and protected." She handed him a small form. "Just sign and mark your names. 3 residents?" Ryan looked back at the shelter, at Lyra waving from the doorway, at her mother standing beside her. He smiled. "Yes," he said. 3. He signed it, with shaking hands. That night, they hung a new sign over the shelter. It read, "The Scrap Haven." Below it, another line, "Built by broken things, made strong by love." And for the first time in her life, Lyra went to bed with a full belly, a warm blanket, and no fear. Her mother fell asleep holding Ryan's hand. And Ryan. He stayed awake just a little longer, listening to the wind, watching the stars, and smiling. Because in the middle of nowhere, in the heart of a junkyard, he had built a family.